Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session, RealTech for the Real World. My name is Julian Kesselman. I'll be the facilitator for the session, and it's a pleasure to have you all along. It's 4:10 on a Tuesday afternoon, and so if you've been to every session today, front to back, all power to you. You truly are the beating heart of this Spark community. For everybody else who's just tuned in for this afternoon session, welcome. A special welcome to the members of our Start Build community, which really represent the beating heart of real estate technology here in Australia. They're a group of entrepreneurs, innovators, technologists, and other enthusiasts that get together on a regular basis right across Australia to advance the future of this sector. So a very particular welcome to you. Thank you to our panelists. So the other three smiling faces that you see on the screen have come along today to give you their view of what real estate technology means and help to bring that to life for us. So, clockwise from the top of my screen, you have Justin Liang from InSpace, the CEO and founder. You also have Teresa from Brand Crush, the CEO and founder, and also Soren from Work Club, who's the global MD. I'll give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves in a couple of moments. Why are we here? Really, what we were hoping to do in this session was define the real tech space. So many of you on the call would have heard around PropTech, this concept of property technology, which to our mind really speaks to a lot of the innovations that are happening in residential real estate and challenging traditional broker models. When we think about real tech, we think about it in a much broader universe, right? So it's really all of the innovations and all of the technologies that are shaping the built environment in all of its different forms. So before we get into the panel, I'll just take a couple of minutes to give you a sense of the scale and scope of what we're dealing with here. Globally, it's been recently reported that the entire asset pool for real estate, be that commercial, residential, and infrastructure, is $130 trillion. So it's enormous. But what is equally shocking on the other end is that in the last 2 decades, the construction end of building all of these assets has only seen 1% in productivity growth, right? So the sector that's shaping the world around us, employing 8% of our economy, has basically been flat, where all of the other sectors that you would have heard from today have seen incredible innovations come to light. And within that backdrop of producing the world in which we live in, the real estate sector is responsible for a profound impact on our natural environment. So real estate globally is responsible for up to 40% of all greenhouse gases. So by some estimations, higher than logistics and second only to agriculture. And in a recent investment that our firm has done into a concrete technology, this really came to light for me, thinking about when you set concrete, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter cube of concrete, which, if that was water, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter would weigh a ton. For concrete, the production of that concrete causes 200 to 300 kilograms of carbon to be emitted, right? So it's a somewhat staggering statistic and just gives you a sense of the impact. These are all really macro concepts, but I think for everybody that's watching today, I would hazard a guess that 95% of you are dialing in from home when otherwise this would have been done from your office. And so we've really felt the impact of this changing built environment so profoundly with COVID over the last couple of months. And so, office owners that once were the center of the white collar professional services world have these large A-grade building assets, which are now competing with the likes of Zoom and Microsoft Teams. So you can see how this large landscape is shifting rapidly. And, we see this as the next kind of compelling segment of growth within the innovation and technology space. And we've brought together a couple of founders to share with you their reflections on how they see the built environment changing and what real tech for the real world will mean into the future. So, as with all the other talks today, if you're in the audience, I would warmly encourage you to jump onto Slido. You'll have the details in your send-out pack. Introduce yourself in the chat function and ask any questions of our panelists, and I can pick them up as we go along. So, look, with that, that's more than enough for me. I'm very excited to introduce you to each of our speakers. I'd like to start with just framing, who you are, what is your business, and give us a sense of something that's unique about your business that the audience can take away. So, Justin, I might start with you.
Hey, I'm Justin. I'm the founder of InSpace. And at InSpace, we allow people to virtually visit spaces, whether those spaces are already built or not. For example, our InSpace XR product allows the building industry to instantly convert their architecture designs into a virtual walkthrough. So you can, physically walk through a space before that space is built and make the right decisions. Our InSpace Stack product is for commercial landlords and agents for them to host virtual inspections at scale and capture leads. I think what's unique about our company is our 3D technology. So typically, it might take someone 3 days to create a virtual walkthrough from an architecture plan. For us, it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah, which is a pretty incredible feat. And for you, I might just stay with you for a second. Given this Spark audience has come from all different sectors, and looking back through some of the talks today, there's been HR tech, there's been fintech, and some other spaces. What for you has been unique in your experience to date about working in this RealTech sector?
Yeah, well, I think what you said was interesting, Julian. We've had 1% productivity increase, over many years. And so I think the commercial opportunity at the moment is just abundant. And I think it's also abundant because of the spending power. The value of, real estate transactions, they're high financial state and they're high psychological state a lot of the times. And so even incremental improvements, are going to carry huge financial value. For example, every year we spend $55 billion on construction mistakes just due to the misinterpretation of design plans. And so if we can improve that by 2%, 5%, 8%, that's a lot of value. A little bit more market intelligence for an agent could mean that they win, a $50 million deal, and, a slightly better CRM, could really make a big difference. So I think there's a lot of opportunity just for incremental improvement. And then that value scales with the value of the asset. So, residential, retail, commercial, urban. And then there's the other end of improvement, which is the disruptive change. So, AI generated design and the fact that buildings are going to be manufactured and auto assembled. So I just think there's an abundance of opportunity, especially now.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the potential impact of a product like InSpace in being able to visualize it digitally and conceptualize it digitally before you start to lay ground, is a real shortcut to saving on some of those big mistakes that you highlighted in construction. Great. We'll come back to you in just a couple of seconds. I wanted to give you, Teresa, an opportunity to introduce yourself, Brand Crush as well, and what you think it is about Brand Crush that makes you unique.
Thank you. So Brand Crush is a brand activation platform. So what we do is we connect brands and agencies with a network of influential businesses for real-world activations. So on our platform, those influential businesses, what we call activation partners, can basically unlock and grow media and revenue potential by hosting brand experiences. And conversely, those brands and agencies now have a really easy way to be able to scale in-home and in-location experiences to reach an audience in the real world. Obviously, for the real estate sector, it's all about physical interactions. So we work with a number of businesses from corporate and co-working locations through to shopping centre groups, through to meal kit delivery services. Really, any business with a physical reach can be on our platform. And I think the most, unique thing about our business, and for those that don't understand this brand activation space, It's often referred to as experiential media. And so experiential media has typically lived offline. These opportunities haven't been very easily discoverable or, bookable. And what we've done is basically made experiential media as bookable as booking a Google or Facebook ad. And what this will mean is, that ease will then translate to more sales, because if you can make it a bookable media, then, you make it easy for people, they'll jump onto it.
Yeah, absolutely. To bring it to life a little, could you just give us a quick example of a piece of bookable real world media you've done recently?
Absolutely. So, for example, we've got a number of chocolate brands that want to activate on our space. We have a number of partners on the space, including cafes and restaurants. And so rather than popping up at the corner of, say, Flinders Street Station, these brands have basically activated across 300 cafes across Australia. What would have taken them, would have probably been impossible to do, they're able to book in less than 5 minutes. And then this network of activation partners, these businesses that have got real world customer reach, they monetize that customer reach by activating on behalf of those brands. So what we've also done is, as well as these smaller businesses, we're also starting to work with some larger scale businesses that have got far greater reach, because our end-to-end platform really helps to streamline that process of those offline interactions.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thanks so much. And Soren, we might jump to you now. Could you give us a minute introduction to yourself? Tell us a little bit about Work Club and what you think makes Work Club so unique.
Sure. So Soren, founder and CEO of Work Club Global. We started with an initial focus on our own club spaces within our physical spaces. So we are what we call pro-working, not co-working, but we have physical places where people work from, they socialize. And over the last couple of years, we moved into managing entire buildings from a human perspective. That's our passion. And there is a lot of focus, as what we're hearing around PropTech, or around the smarter buildings from a human or from an operational perspective, around driving efficiencies and cost down on running buildings, which is great. But we're kind of sitting in partnership with that as the smarter buildings from a human perspective. And we do that through physical locations. So we have shared workspaces, we have retail concepts on the different brand, we have bar concepts under a different brand, and all those components are playing a role in creating a better connected human ecosystem, which is based on us bringing people together in certain ways. We have 7-8 different ways of bringing people together to create meaningful conversations and connections. And that's kind of what we overlay as a set of experiences to the hardware, if you like. And I guess the unique approach from us is pretty much the overlaying of those experiences to a hardware, i.e. physical space, which can be an entire building or even a precinct.
Yep, absolutely. And so, look, many other co-working spaces and even office towers have, front of house. They have other staff teams that activate. What would you say is the secret sauce in Work Club and bringing that human perspective to life?
So it's really the set of experiences that we've developed over the years, where the original concept was to bring as many different kind of people together in one space, if you like, a clubhouse. And from there, we experimented with a way of bringing them together, connect them as a community in a almost invisible way, not in a forced way. And that's led to us developing 7-8 different kind of experiences that we do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to bring people together. And, whether that's a 70,000 square meter building, or it's a precinct, or it's a small club space, the principles are the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to round that out, could you give us an example of an experience that you've run which you think has created a profound impact for the members?
Good question. So One of them we do is a roundtable. So we invite 7-8 members. It's a launch roundtable. We facilitate. It's an hour and a half. Each person have got 9 minutes. You start out with a couple of minutes about who you are, what your background is, and what keeps you up at night right now. And then you leave the rest, maybe 6-7 minutes, for the rest of the group to talk from experience of how they dealt with a similar challenge. Most of it is work related. Some of it is private. So it could be about your partner, your relationship, your business, your cash flow, whatever it is. But everybody have got 9 minutes. And at the end of that process, you've been vulnerable, because we always, as moderators, we don't talk about the dog or, we go deep, and we drop deep quite quickly to set the bar. And whether you're an introvert or extrovert, once you've spent an hour and a half in a room together that way, you're connected, and you're really connected from a sense that you now know these people, and you feel connected to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is really what underpins the work club community. That connection.
And also, just to add to that, the interior design of the work club spaces are amazing. Like, I feel like I'm in a Bond movie when I'm in those spaces. It's awesome.
It helps, but it's kind of just a supporting act. The physical space is kind of, anybody can do that. I think the difficulty is, how do you look at an entire building or a precinct or even a city, and how do we just connect people in a little bit better way, so that there's a reason why you would go there, to that building, or to that precinct, and not just that you feel the difference. You feel you're part of something.
Yeah. And so speaking of that kind of experience and activation of the space, I mean, Teresa, to your mind, your business model initially was really about representing brands and finding a space for them to come to life. For the actual asset owners or the precinct operators, what is the benefit for them in terms of activating that space?
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple of benefits. One, obviously, they're monetizing their physical customer reach. So we recognise these asset owners as being new media. The fact that they're connecting with people on a daily basis in an environment, where people live, work and play, that is actually the best place in which to interact with people in a contextual type of environment. So we basically are unlocking that opportunity for them to monetize that customer reach. But they won't do it just based on that, because that's not their primary purpose of being. So their primary purpose of being is to either, for example, for Soren, it's to really ensure that your members are getting a great experience. So, they want to control the partnerships and the collaborations, so that they're adding value to their own members, to their core members. So the platform is twofold. One, obviously unlocks them as a media opportunity, experiential media opportunity, but two, it actually enables them to have control around the types of activations that they run, so that it's enhancing the environment for their core customers and members. So.
Yeah, which makes sense. And I think in the retail environment, we've all seen the advent of Amazon and the rise of e-commerce challenging that traditional retail model, and retail is struggling with how do we actually bring an omni-channel strategy to life. What do you see the role of Brand Crush being in that narrative around kind of breathing fresh life into retail?
Absolutely. I think, if I kind of step back and go back to what was the genesis of Brand Crush and why we actually started, is because fundamentally we believe in real world, in physical connections, and that humans need physical interactions. And that's probably COVID has demonstrated that more so than ever, with, the high rate of mental illness around the disconnection. We can have all these virtual conferences that we want, but we actually crave physical connection. So the premise of Brand Crush is to bring those connections to life. And so what we always recognise is that real estate has a powerful role to play in those in-person experiences, and that those in-person experiences can really disrupt and drive a lot of brand discovery for businesses. So although that we saw this absolute phenomenal growth growth in the online space, what you're going to see is a huge amount of clutter. We've already seen it, and it's actually worse now in the digital environment. So it means that these businesses actually need other reasons other ways to be able to cut through the noise. And so this gives the real estate sector a huge opportunity to be that channel to be able to do that. So I see, huge amount of opportunities. And during COVID, although, we had a direct impact, what we did do is actually really focused on those end-to-end for the real estate sector, because we can see that there's going to be a huge need amongst brands and agencies to really try to disrupt the digital clutter and to connect with consumers in the real world. So I think it's going to be a really great growth opportunity. I know that there's a number of them have obviously been challenged, like corporate towers and whatnot, and it's about bringing different experiences. When someone comes into the office, they might be choosing to just go in 3 days a week or 2 days a week. That flexibility is going to be open to them. So, Brand Crush can really help to partner brands with these businesses to create these really unique experiences. So when they come in, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be something to look forward to. It's going to be a point of difference versus you being in your home or on Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking about digital noise and digital clutter, I feel like that's been the last 6 months of my life, and probably the lives of many other people on the call. And we'd like to just step away from the screen and blink ourselves into the sunlight and get into the real world.
A amount of energy that can be gained from that.
Absolutely. Sorry, and I expect that you probably have some views around this and around the role that physical space has to play in probably a bit of COVID relief and then coaxing people back out into the real world. Love to hear your views.
So the physical space that we're in is basically flexible, right? And we're offering a flexible offering. So what we're starting to see, and my guess is that it's very hard for any company of any size, of any maturity, to commit 10 years or 15 years to anything, right? Because it's just, how can you do that for your stakeholder? You just don't know what's ahead, that far ahead. So there's kind of this push that was already on the way, but it's accelerated now, where there's a need for flexibility, agility, building in some kind of flex. Not everything to be flex, but just lowering your long-term commitment to a point where it's back to the absolute core, and then adding on, a couple of valves, whether it's in CBD or whether it's fringe locations. That depends on your culture and your team and locations and your business and everything else. But I think COVID has just accelerated what was already happening. And to me, it's sort of just, we jumped 3 to 5 years, which is quite exciting, in the middle of this madness. But So I think we're seeing a power shift as well from landlords to tenants, and that's probably the most exciting, without stepping on anybody's toes. But it's been very much sort of landlord driven. These are the terms: take them or leave them. Now there's a complete different understanding, which is, I think everybody here on the panel will probably agree with, that it's you need to really offer something more than just space to get people to come into your office. And that's as a landlord, that's as a corporate enterprise, company, whatever you call it. There needs to be a reason for people coming in. I can think of many reasons, but I think it's accelerated towards a hybrid. It's not one or the other thing. It's probably just a hybrid of solutions that to me makes sense. And we're offering part solution to the whole, not a whole solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what was interesting, you're talking about the shift from landlord power down to tenant power. I'd probably even take that a step further and say it's more even in the hands of occupants. So literally the workers that come in are voting with their feet. So, there's many large corporations in Australia where management has tried to call their workers back to the office, and people have flat refused. And so really it's actually in the sense the power is in the hands of the individual almost, and then that's flowing up. So it's a real inversion of that traditional power dynamic.
And there's some great case study that's going to be written in the next 12 months around the cultural aspects, because certain companies are so culturally masculine, I would say, that they're basically going to say you need to be in the office 5 days a week. That's not a flexibility, that's a must. And the interesting part is going to be is whether people are going to do that for a while, and then they're going to look at other options, and how those companies are going to fare. So I think there's so many dynamics from a cultural perspective and company perspective to flow through from all of this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I would like to know, actually, say, Justin, for example, how your team is thinking about this from a cultural perspective. You're a digitally native company that creates digital experiences for the real world, but just last week you were really desperate to come in for a face-to-face coffee. So yeah, we'd love to hear how a digital RealTech business is actually thinking about this cultural challenge.
I just like hanging out with you, Julian. Yeah. No, look, it's funny because when COVID hit, like all the extroverts in my team were really suffering, including myself, and all the introverts are like, oh, this is heaven. For us, we've made it optional. The office is open, and if you want to come in, great, right? We don't really set days. I think everyone sort of recognizes that there is a place for in-person collaboration. We had an offsite the other day, outside, and it was really great to have the team together. But I think generally, for our company culture, we've never really cared what, hours or where you work. It's always been about the results. So we've just continued that ethos. One thing that has been interesting though is we've needed to hire remotely, without meeting people. So we've hired in 3 other countries now without having, met someone physically. And 3 of my team members, the first time I met them was actually in VR. So, we had a multiplayer VR session where everyone dialed in, and, we were in there for 2-3 hours. So, it's been flexible.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that you, as a culture, are living and breathing the product as well.
I'm loving the VR session.
Excellent. Look, I think the risk is in a talk on real estate innovation in 2020 that we get kind of stuck in this COVID space. So I might step out and start to think about the future. So Justin, maybe staying with you, thinking about where the real estate industry has been over the last, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 years. Its pace of change, and that we're kind of at this cusp of digitization. What role do you think digitization is going to play for the real estate sector at large in shaping our experience of it?
Shaping the human experience. Look, I think the answer is yes, everything. It touches all aspects, but there are 3 themes which I think will really change our experience as humans. The first is virtual visualization. So searching for a property, you'll be able to virtually tour any property that's in the market, whether it's a home or an office. You'll also be able to virtually tour any space that you're planning to build, right? So interior design, all of it. You'll simulate sunlight. You'll be able to see all the privacy issues, simulate weather, all of that will happen. The second is, I think robots will, serve us in all areas of life, at work and home. Robots will cook for us. They'll fold our clothes. They'll, feed our dogs. Maybe not get the children ready in the morning and feed them. But it's like, we're already seeing that in our home. With the Roomba running around and your Google Home. And then I think the third thing is spaces will start to develop a conscience of their own based on the data that they take from how we use those spaces, and then they should mold and configure around us. So when you step in the shower, should the shower head adjust for your height and for your temperature? And when you go to sleep at night, should it regulate for your body temperature? If you're wanting to do a yoga session in your living room, can you click a button and have the layout reconfigure? So yeah, I think I think, yeah, there are a few technologies that will impact our experience, very much so. And I'm excited about it.
Brilliant. So I think, I mean, that's thinking about some of the kind of more, I guess those digital aspects. What I wanted to actually ask you, Teresa, so you are relatively new, I would say, to the real tech sector. When we were kind of prepping for this call, you were talking about how most of the focus and most of your kind of customer focus has been around the brands and the real estate. Customers are a kind of new vertical, and looking at back from that other lens. What has been your experience to date in moving from the brands as a customer set towards real estate owners and operators as a customer set? How has that been different for you?
It hasn't been different in that we're a two-sided SaaS-enabled marketplace. So, both sides of the marketplace have always been our customers. I think what has been different in that we were focusing on different verticals. So, where we kind of kicked off was definitely in the corporate and co-working and health and wellness and hospitality vertical. And of late, we're very much focused on, I guess, the retail property and shopping centre vertical. So that, I guess, the key difference is that you do have a number of more stakeholders in that vertical, and you do have what I've noticed is a lot more offline interactions in that vertical, which, I guess there's a number of friction areas, but I see that as a really exciting space for RealTech, because there's a lot of friction areas to kind of solve for. So that's probably what we've experienced in focusing in on this new vertical for us. And, we've seen, a lot of opportunities for growth that we didn't quite expect. Like, for example, in the brand activation space, if I can talk obviously to that space specifically, we saw there's a huge space for productivity gains. And I think, Julian, you were mentioning that before, just small little changes in these really big businesses can have, astronomical benefits. And we underestimated the sales productivity gains that could be achieved through our platform by working with this vertical. So as an example, we saw anywhere between 15 to 30% of what business development managers do in booking a space. They're not just booking a space out there, doing everything from invoicing and collections to having to think about activation success. And I think that's been a really interesting finding for us, because if you can translate that 35% to revenue generating activities, then the growth potential for that vertical being able to monetize their real world media is pretty phenomenal. So that's probably some of the learnings that we've seen. That is just, about quietening the noise and honestly ironing out some of those friction points and converting those points. They're almost simple solutions to just a problem that's kind of legacy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I think if, there's been one thing that I've learned working in the RealTech vertical, it's that being able to make that business case and that hard ROI is almost, a gate opener to the conversation, I think, or at least has been historically. I mean, Justin, you guys as a business have been around for some time now. You've got some really strong brands and some really strong case studies. Thinking back to a little bit earlier in your journey, what were some of the frictions that you encountered looking to get InSpace XR out there as a product, and how did you overcome those frictions in kind of moving from that startup to more of the established business that you have today?
I think pre-COVID, people still had a space in their minds for emerging tech, and VR was definitely like a emerging tech. We really had to stop talking about the technology and start talking about outcomes. So I think that was a really big shift. And like you said, it's about building a business case and going, what does this actually translate in terms of numbers on your construction project, right? And then let's build a pilot around it and prove it. So I think that was one. And then the other was just a lot of education on, how to use the VR tech, how do you present in VR, and investing in that education really got our name out there as standard. A few universities teach our products inside their architecture degrees now, and so a lot of education.
Yeah, and so through that education process, where do you feel the sector is at large on its innovation maturity journey?
I think the appetite for innovation has changed, Julian. So, I think companies now have the bandwidth for what's crucial now, right? What's going to be providing security, both financially and psychologically. And so I think innovation isn't so much on a lot of, in mind for a lot of these businesses. It's more about what solutions can we get us, through this. And so at the moment, what's been, majority of our business is actually commercial real estate. So, vacancy rates have already doubled. They're going to 12%. All the leasing agents are scrambling for virtual inspection technology. So that's really taken up for us this year, whereas the actual VR headset technology, has actually taken a bit of a pause.
Yeah. So pivoted more to solving the problem of the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, while we're thinking about the startup journey, Soren, I think a lot of people on the call would be interested to hear a little bit about what it's like to start a startup anchored in real estate. So most of the other founders who are listening will either be a hardware startup, which is hard enough in itself, or a software startup, but you've actually gone and occupied spaces, with large capital requirements and kind of long lead times. What is it like starting a startup that exists in the real world?
I feel a bit old because I've been through a few, so I'm getting gray hairs and close to the 50. But I think when you start a business, when I started 7 years ago, Work Club, there was just a lot of, it had been a concept in my head since 2005, and it was kind of fluffy, and people, I spoke to a few people about it, and they all, they didn't really get it. And why would they, as well? So I backed myself, and that's the way it got off the ground. That I just had to come up with a pilot of some sort, something to validate my own theory and build from. And that's really how it started. Because there's enough people out there that's going to tell you it's not going to work, and you're just going to have to disregard all of that, because it's if you do want to try something new and something that is not mainstream and something that hasn't been done as a mainstream solution, then you have to lead, and you have to be persistent, and it's not going to get given to you. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to hustle for years. It's not just a entrepreneur. It's not something that's you're just sailing on the wave kind of thing. It's not. It's just incredible hard work and a lot of luck and persistence. And I think with us, the challenge was that you do need capital to build 1,000 square meters or 4,000 square meters, and unfortunately, that's quite a bit. So that's a good thing for us when other people want to come in, but it's also a challenge when you want to open the first one. So my advice is stay in control for as long as you can, because once you lose that control, all your freedom to pivot, like Justin just mentioned before, or to change as you learn, it's disappeared. And I mean, we've changed so many times over the last 7 years, and I'm just so thankful for being in a position to do that and evolve. And I think we're a lot better for it. But if you need to dumb it down to a certain square or a certain return that needs to go 3-6 months out, then you're up against it.
Yeah, most definitely. So can you just give us a sense of what that first pilot looked like as compared to the product today?
It was just a smaller version. It was 700-800 square meters in Sydney CBD, opposite Supreme Court, and physical place quite similar to what it is today, actually, in kind of look and feel. But more the experiences was quite simple. We just had 2 set of experiences, 1 membership option, take it or leave it, and then from there we've just we've just learned. We learned from everything that didn't work, and we've learned from what did work, and we built that from there. But the easier part was always the physical space. The hard part was really how do we get people connected in that true sense of connection where it's not forced, but it's almost invisible, and people feel they're connected, and they're not quite sure why.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's really interesting about thinking about Work Club, perhaps through a kind of digital culture lens, is that the underlying hardware and the firmware of Work Club is so fixed, and upgrading that, getting that wrong in the first instance, you have a lot of technical debt, as developers would say. But you, of course, do have that ability to constantly change the experiences and the software, that human element that sits on top. And as you kind of said before, that's really the beating heart of the Work Club experience. So.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part. Sorry, Julian, just say, how do we connect the physical part and the actual tech part more and more? I think I'm increasingly interested in that, because I was a bit anti-tech in that regard, that it wasn't about the tech, it was more that to be invisible, and it was really, but how do we really leverage both, and how do we bring those together? Now that I have a good understanding of the human side, I'm fascinated by the tech side. I'm part of Singularity University on the faculty there, and I'm the only one that doesn't know anything about tech, basically. But I'm fascinated about how to bring the two together and create something better for it.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably what the tech world needs is more people that don't know about tech to bring that humanity into it as well. So look, to close us out, I would love to get each of your reflections on what in your experience in building a business in the RealTech sector, and if there's a bunch of early stage founders who I'm sure are watching this session right now, what is a piece of advice that you would give them unique to the real estate sector to help them succeed? Maybe Justin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think especially now, a lot of the real estate businesses are, thinking about short-term survival. So if you are thinking about solving a problem, make sure it's the most important problem, with the highest stakes, and then so choose your problem carefully, and then choose your target customer very carefully, and find a target customer with money to spend. And once you get very clear on the problem and clear on the customer, then think about the solution. I think founders often don't spend enough on the problem space, and especially in real estate, there are all these dynamics between how people get paid and who's got interest in certain processes and what stakeholders need to. Getting clear on that, I think, will save founders a world of pain later on. And then if you're thinking of starting a business, you should do it. It's really hard, but so much fun.
Great. I love that call to arms. And how about for you, Teresa? So moving into the real estate vertical, what are some lessons that you've learned over recent times which you would want to share?
Yeah, very similar to what you were saying, Julian. Don't push your product onto these clients. You need to have, and there needs to be a fit. And what I'd also say is really provide a solution to the problem. But in order to identify that solution, you need to immerse yourself in their daily challenges. there's a huge amount of areas of friction, and you need to understand them so that you can actually solve for them. And it needs to be ROI driven. Like, without a doubt, that is the key thing that I'm seeing and I'm learning across the board, is like, what is my return on investment going to be? Because there's so many conflicting priorities in this vertical that you need to be able to really demonstrate the best case study, the best business case for them to be able to get in the door. And I think, you know, as hard as starting your own business is, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, love creating. If you love creating, do it. If you don't do it. Simple as that.
Beautiful. And how about for you, Soren? What pearls of wisdom would you like to share?
So I agree with everything Justin said, and Teresa as well. I think it's got to be bottom drive or bottom line driven, right? It's going to be profit driven. That's what it is. You got to solve a problem, and you got to prove, and you know, in a tangible way, how that's going to drive a bottom line. The industry has been very conservative, I think, for years in general. There are pockets that are extremely innovative and progressive and doing some amazing stuff. I'm hopeful that pocket will become bigger now because of necessity of that power shift, and I think it will. I'm already seeing that, and so I think there's opportunity to really push some new boundaries and come up with some really progressive, interesting new ideas in partnership with landlords and in partnership with the industry. Again, they've got to be based on bottom line, basically profits, I think. So it's, business wise, you know, if you want to start your own business, it's hard work. It's not something you don't get to the end in a year. You know, it's a marathon, but it's it's I love what I do. It's not work, you know. So if you do that, then it can't be too bad.
Yeah, most definitely. So it seems that the heart of it, you know, love what you do. Otherwise, it's going to be too much of a grind. So really stick with something that you love, and make sure that the business case stacks up. Strong lessons for the real estate sector. I think, you know, if I could share my final vision, I would love to see some innovations being adopted by the sector where the business case doesn't stack up front. To just try it and see that as the cost of R&D. That would be incredible. We may be a few years off yet, but you know, here's to hoping.
Love it.
Well said.
Excellent. Well, look, I'd like to once again thank everybody that's dialed in to find out a little bit more around the RealTech sector. It is burgeoning, absolutely, and you'll hear more and more from these three founders and our Start Build community over the coming years. And I would like to once again specifically thank Justin Liang, the CEO of InSpace and InSpace XR, Teresa, the CEO and founder of Brand Crush, and Soren Trumpeduck, the CEO and founder of Work Club. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.